Okay. In this video, I'm going to say some fucked up shit. I'm going to say some shit that's commonly perceived as being fucked up, but it's also something I believe to be true. That's if you disagree, let me know why in the comments, and we can talk it out. We can hash it out. We can have some good constructive discussions down there, maybe, and we can all think about it more deeply, and that'd be good. Because I'm perfectly open to the possibility of being very, very wrong about a large portion of things that I feel to be true. I'm more than willing to admit my uncertainty when it comes to lots of shit. But this is one of those things that I do feel pretty strongly about. And it's basically what I said in the previous video towards the end. Like, I would much rather be terminated as an embryo, as a fetus, than carry out the vast majority, I believe, of lives that have been carried out on this planet. Human lives, let alone sentient, conscious lives. No, just human lives. I'd much rather be annihilated as a fetus, an embryo, than be forced into that and either, check out when I decide that, okay, enough is enough, or death is eventually imposed onto me. I would have just much rather just destroy me as an embryo. Destroy that potential. That'd be the better alternative from my current point of view. I feel like most people in the modern day, if they were to really consider, again, what that consisted of, what that full story looked like what kind of thoughts did they have, what sort of beliefs did they have, do they harbor about the world around them, about themselves and their place in the world and their behaviors, what did that life consist of in its entirety, the full story. The vast majority of those I would not have wanted to carry out, and for many reasons. I mean, again, just not only the quality of life, and that's an obvious one, but also what did they do? What would even come close to justifying, to warranting that suffering that took place in the vast majority of those lives? And unless you were to make the argument that it was all it was all heading somewhere, and some far off future ideal, maybe we're living it now, and I should be very grateful for my current life and all those sacrifices that had to take place there to make this and similar lives possible. But even that feels like a stretch. Because this life if this isn't going anywhere, I said that if this isn't going anywhere, this isn't worth living if this isn't contributing to some better thing in the future. If it's not, if this is if we're on a sinking ship and it's going the fuck down, this life isn't worth starting either, not for its own sake. That wouldn't make any sense to me. That's not. And so far I've been lucky, I've been fortunate, but the future, right around the corner, you don't know what the fuck is out there. And again, odds are, eventually I'm going to have to pay quite a high cost, quite a steep price for my existence, for my coming into being. And what will warrant that? What will justify that? And no amount of pleasure, no amount of could ever justify that. And again, from my current view. So, this, let alone those lives, the vast majority of lives, that is just a definite, fuck that. I would not want to carry that out. No fucking way. And again, I think if most people looked at those lives honestly, assessed them properly, they would come to a very similar conclusion. That's just no fucking way. That's completely unacceptable to carry that out for its own sake. Again, at least for its own sake, that's something that doesn't even come close to covering its own cost. And I know that people don't like It's speaking in those black and white terms of like, benefit cost about something as complex as a human life. But for many human lives, I would argue that sort of assessment is reasonable, because there wasn't much. That's the other. There's so much limitation there, because I don't know what it is to live the vast majority of those lives, obviously. So claiming as though there's not really much substance there, like as far as their thoughts, their feelings, all these things that they experienced, and again, their perceptions of those experiences and the way those perceptions molded the experiences themselves. So it's impossible for me to really, truly, completely, 100% say that I would have rather been terminated, but I feel very strongly that that's probably the case. At the very least, I can claim that, especially for its own sake. I mean, if you're talking about some sort of future ideal, that sacrifice was worth getting there, then sure, I can see, but yeah, I would have much rather been annihilated as a fetus, as an embryo, than carry out the vast majority of those lives, at least for its own sake. Those lives were not things that covered their own costs. And I don't... And again, it's not that I think highly of myself. That's not like, oh, my life is just so much better than... It's just that if I'm being honest, again, I think quite lowly of a large portion of human lives that have been carried out here. And not in the sense that I look down on... There's so many distinctions to be made. Like, as though, But when you consider, again, all those factors that took place and just so many desires that exist in the brains, I mean, if you were to really consider, if you were to look into the minds of many, many human beings that have carried out their existences here, their thoughts and what they consisted of, I would not want to be the vast majority of those beings. And I don't think that's a stretch. I don't think that's a crazy thing. Again, I don't think that's a fucked up thing to claim. Not only that I wouldn't have wanted to be conceived as it, but then I wouldn't have wanted to be, if I was conceived, I wouldn't have wanted to be allowed to gradually develop into a more complex being that would develop a capacity to, again, suffer far more severely than we can even come close to understanding. Like, why? I would have much rather been just flushed the fuck out, stomped out, torn out as an embryo, a fetus. But yeah, it's not that I think I'm hot shit. Like, oh, my life is just so worth living. It's just, and certainly worth starting. No, it's just that I think that those lives that couldn't be something that's worth living. It just couldn't. I don't know what it is to be the vast majority of people, but I feel as though I know enough just from a distance, just from observing it from a distance and considering what those minds likely consisted of and the desires, the beliefs, the behaviors, again, and so much horror, so much carnage. Those were not lives that were worth living, let alone starting, is what I feel. I feel to be. So if you don't feel that to be true, let me know why in the comments. Please, because again, open to the possibility. But that's something I feel quite strongly about. That I would not have wanted to carry out those lives. And again, I would argue that this, I would apply it to the modern day. The majority, I would again argue potentially the vast majority of lives that are conceived and birthed, rather than be those. And again, you consider their thoughts, their behaviors, their actions, what they inflict onto others, and their beliefs about what it is that they're doing and what they're supposed to be doing here. And all these things, if you consider all of that, I would much rather have been annihilated, terminated as an embryo. Just have that potential be stomped out, because that potential, if you consider what that's likely going to consist of, it's certainly not worth. It doesn't cover its own cost, and it likely won't cover the cost of the lives of others. It's just a net negative sort of thing. And that might be a fucked up thing to claim. But if you feel differently, let me know why. And because I'm very much open to the possibility of being quite wrong. So